Welcome to this tutorial on how to use FiLMiC Pro for the iPhone. It's an app available on the iTunes store. It's a fantastic app and it will make your videos filmed on your smartphone a lot more professional. Now, the first thing that you should do before you film anything using your smartphone is switch your phone onto airplane mode and also close down all the other apps that you might have open. This is because when you film video, it uses up a lot of battery. And by putting on airplane mode and closing down other apps, we're going to save as much battery power as possible. The other thing you need to do is make sure you've got enough space on your phone. Using FiLMiC Pro can eat up a lot of your space. We're talking gigabytes of space. So make sure that you've gone and either deleted or transferred movies and music, etc. that might be eating up your free space on your phone. Okay, once you've done that, open up the app and you should be treated to an introductory screen, something like this. I'm going to go through all the different buttons that we have here, but first off, I'm going to ignore the three here as well as the circles in the center. I'll get back to them in a sec. But let's just start off on the most basic buttons here. We've got a timer in the middle and a red button on the side. If I press the red button, then you'll see the timer starting to go up. This is because I'm now recording a video. If I press the red button again, it stops. Now, above the timer, you have two bars, a red bar and a green bar. The red bar is your battery life of the phone. Green bar is the available space. So if either of those are getting quite low, then you need to rectify either of those problems. Moving on, the play button will go into playback. So what I just filmed, you can play it. After that, you have the settings button. And then up here, you have the zoom. So plus, minus, and 1, 2, 3 represents default zoom settings that you can change in order to set particular zoom rates. So if I press plus now, it will zoom in. Minus, zoom out. Now, all smartphones don't have optical zoom. They only have digital zoom. Basically, this means if you zoom in, your image quality is going to get increasingly worse the further you zoom in. My recommendation is that you don't use the zoom at all, but you physically pick up your phone and get closer to what you're trying to film if you want to do a close-up. Okay, let's go into the settings menu and I'll go through some of what you need to be aware of. Frame rate, because I'm making this video in Australia, the frame rate should be set at 25 frames per second because this is our standard. If you're from North America, you'll want to set it to 30 frames per second to work on North American televisions. If you have an iPhone 5 or 6, you'll also have available here slow motion and fast motion FX. I'm not going to go through them, but that allows you to make slow-mo and fast-mo by altering the frame rate, and that's pretty cool with this app. Moving down, camera. The resolution and video encoding of the app basically sets the quality of the image that we're going to film. Now, the higher the quality of the image, the more space it's going to take up on your phone. So if you only have a 16 gigabyte phone, I wouldn't be filming at maximum quality. However, if you have a 64 or 128 gigabyte phone, you can probably afford to film at max. So if you click on resolution, there's a lot of options here, including 2K, but I just focus on the two top ones, HD 1920 and HD 1280. Basically, if you know how YouTube quality works, the first one represents 1080p, the second one represents 720p. So they're both high definition, they're both very good quality. Obviously 1080p, the first one, is going to be of a higher quality, but you can make your own decision on which you should use. Video encoding is the compression setting of the app. Basically, again, it's another indication of how good the image is going to be quality-wise. Now, you can go down to FiLMiC Extreme if you want to, but as you can see, that takes up 50 megabytes a second, which is a lot of space. So I keep it on FiLMiC Quality, which is 32 megabytes a second. The reticle is basically setting those circular images we saw at the start of the app, either to be single or double. I'd recommend always leaving it on double, and I'll explain why soon. Camera UI is the user interface. I prefer transparent, but that's a personal preference and you can play around with either of them. Now, image stabilization. This is another indication of how good your quality of the image is going to be. Basically, what it does is if you are filming an image using a tripod, which I'm currently doing, you do not need image stabilization on. That will ensure the maximum quality of the image. However, if you are going handheld, it's very difficult to keep a phone stable while you're handheld. So you can turn image stabilization on. It will lower the quality a little bit, but it will also mitigate some of those shakes that you have in your hand when you're holding the camera handheld. But because I'm currently using a tripod, I'm going to turn image stabilization off. Audio you can leave at 48 kilohertz and turn on headphone monitoring if you're using an external microphone. Other than that, you can pretty much ignore all the other settings for the moment. Okay, so back to our app. Now, I'll go through each of these circles, which in the options menu were called reticles. This reticle here, the square one, is your focus. Let's say I want to focus on the apple. I'll move this down to the apple, and the app will automatically refocus itself, so the apple is now in focus at the front of the shot. After this, you want to lock that focus. I know the apple's not going to move, but if you were filming a subject that does move, like a person or an animal, then you don't want them constantly going in and out of focus, and you don't want the app to constantly be auto-focusing. So you need to lock that focus by pressing the square button down the bottom left. After that, you need to set your exposure. That's the circular reticle up here. If you move the exposure around, you'll see that we are changing the brightness of the shot. And that's why I've got the computer set up here, because that's clearly a bright image and it's going to darken everything when I put the reticle there, or if I move it around, we'll get different shades of exposure. This is basically personal preference. You should just move it around until you think that the image is just about right. Not too bright, not too dark. I'm probably happy about there. Once you've got the exposure at the place that you like it, you should lock that as well by pressing the red button down there. The final thing you can do, if you want, is set a white balance. Now, in a shot like this, a white balance is completely unnecessary, but in some situations when you're filming an interview or somebody's face, or basically if there's a person in the shot, then the camera of your smartphone might not get the correct shade of white in order to properly represent their skin tone. So the way you can avoid that is basically just get a plain white sheet of paper and put it in front of the camera like so. And then click Lock White Balance. That's all you need to do. And the camera now knows the correct shade of white for that shot, and any subjects that you're filming should have their correct skin tone. After that, all you need to do is press the red record button, and that's our shot. Now, there's a few more other bits and pieces that I'd like to go through with you. If you see on the top left corner of the screen, there's an arrow button. If you click that, we get even more interface options. If you press the I, that will just give you some help screens and more information about the app. If you turn on the grid lines, it's a bit hard to see in that shot, but basically it's giving you grid lines that represent the rule of thirds. If I press this, the next one, which is a kind of a WAV form, it's turning on and off the audio monitor in the left-hand side of the screen. We always want that on because particularly if we're doing interviews, we want to ensure that we're getting sound. And that's a very good visual representation. As you can see, it's going up and down as I speak. It's a very good visual representation just to remind yourself that one, you're getting sound, and two, it's not too loud or too soft. If it is too loud or too soft, then the next button is what you need, the microphone button. You can adjust the audio gain level there. So basically, if that green bar is too soft, up the audio gain, and vice versa. If it's too loud, bring the audio gain down. The next button is your flash or torch. You can't see it there, but a torch is now on. It's very hard to see. but you can adjust the torch level as well, probably unnecessary for most situations. The Z buttons set your zoom, and these numbers here, 1, 2, 3, you can set the zoom amount as a preset. However, as I said before, I don't think you should be using the zoom on any smartphone anyway, so I'm not going to go through those particular functions. Final button goes to the front-facing camera if you so choose. And as you can see, I'm currently filming this with a Sony camcorder. And that's basically how you use the app. So just remember, the first thing you do, if I can get it, is move your square reticle, which is focus, on the subject of your shot, and then lock it. Then move the circle reticle, which is setting the exposure, until you find a spot on the shot where you think it has about the right level of brightness. Then, if you want, you can do a white balance by putting a white sheet of paper in front of the shot so the camera recognizes the correct shade of white, and lock that as well. Easy.